This is Marcus Whitney's audio universe.
Like, you gotta do the work. You gotta show up and just do the work.
What's up? How's it going, everybody out there? Another episode of Marcus Whitney Live. Happy Thursday. Really excited about this conversation. This is a new friend of mine who was introduced to me by a mutual friend, Betsy. So Betsy, thank you for making this connection. Susanne Tedrick is the author of Women in Color in Tech, and she was nice enough to give me a copy of the book. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. It's a fantastic read. The book really just doesn't just cover the statistics because, as she points out early in the book, we've had so many reports and so many analysis on this topic. We understand that this is really about the deeper underlying systemic issues, and it's also a bit of a roadmap of how to navigate and how to be strategic about this. And why she's able to do that is because she's had her own successful career, and many of these things she's kind of encountered herself. So this is a topic as a man of color in tech. It is not quite as bad as it is for women in color in tech, but it's still bad. So it was a topic I really wanted to cover. So please welcome Susanne to the show.
Marcus, thank you so much.
Yeah, Susanne, this is great. I definitely want to start by tapping into your personal story, how you got into technology. My career started in technology. I have a passion for it. I feel like it's an incredible lever for economic advancement. I actually dropped out of college, so it afforded me a path that I would not have normally had, quite frankly. So I'd love to hear about your story in tech.
Yeah. So for me, I've always loved technology. When my dad would come home, he'd bring all kinds of computers, electronic components, and so I'd always stay up till like midnight, 1 o'clock, playing around with them. And then making it worse, like I'd open them up to see how they worked. And, obviously he wasn't thrilled about that. But, I've always just had this, fascination with just like, computers and technology. And unfortunately, I didn't really get that opportunity to, kind of pursue it immediately. There were, a number of personal circumstances. And, just quite frankly, I didn't think that, I was meant for technology. That was for smarter people. That was for people that, didn't get C's in math. That wasn't necessarily for me. So it wasn't until, I guess, many years later when, I had been working in financial services and, I was great at my job. I hated my job. Like after a while, it was just like, I cannot possibly keep doing this. And, I just kept revisiting in my mind, well, why not give this a shot? So I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to, do internships and boot camps, hackathons, volunteer work. I mean, you name it. And I just really held myself accountable for my success. And I was lucky enough to land an internship at IBM as a, technical sales engineer. And I did a really good job, and they ended up hiring me full time. So that's where I am now. So my journey took a lot longer, but I'm really glad that I did it. As you said, it's really opened a lot of opportunity for me. I've had the true pleasure of helping other people, which is really important to me, and giving people the tools so that they can be successful and realize like economic success. So I don't regret making that decision.
Can you talk in a little bit more detail about the path, that really weird, uncharted path of hackathons and user groups and conferences, and how you navigated that effectively to that internship that resulted in your official career change?
Yeah. So I don't want to make it out to be that every experience yielded great things, or that there weren't moments where I was frustrated. Like it's definitely daunting, walking into a hackathon. You have basic understanding of Python, and then you have all of these people who are like super duper coders, and you're like, whoa, I'm not on your level.
Right.
But at the same time, it's that willingness to be uncomfortable and to grow from it. Like the common saying is, growth and comfort don't exist together. And that's definitely true. Like you have to kind of put yourself out there. You may not always be successful, but you will definitely learn from, each, conference, each hackathon, boot camp. You will learn and grow from it. That's the important part. And so as I was going from experience to experience to experience, I always kept that in the back of my head. That isn't to say there wasn't the obligatory happy hour when things, went sideways, but, you just don't stay in that place for long. Like you just keep moving and you keep holding yourself to that goal.
Can we rewind back to the young kid who was getting C's in math?
Yeah.
I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think I've got two sons. One's 21 and one's 19. The 19-year-old loves technology. He's currently at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, getting a computer engineering degree. And in high school, here in Nashville, he was in a program. It was an IT academy, and it was a track that you could go on to like really focus on programming and networking and all these great things, which was really, really good. Just incorporated into his high school curriculum. And I think watching him go through that process really illuminated for me a lot about the difficulties that young girls, I shouldn't even say women, that young girls face when trying to engage in STEM. In school, like there is this weird expectation around who really is cut out for a career in the STEM fields. And we're adults, so we went to school in a previous era where I can only assume it was worse. Now, as a boy, nobody ever told me that I couldn't, be in technology when I was younger. What was that like for you? I mean, I sort of feel like the C's in math may not have only been based on what your strengths were, but may have even had some social implications.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of social implications. So one of the things that a lot of researchers cite is that for girls to successfully, go through school and into STEM careers, a lot of what helps is when they have role models who look like them, and have gone through shared experiences. If you're really not interacting with people like that, like if you're not seeing it actively, if most of the people, women that you encounter are in different professions, or quite frankly, just are like, why on earth would you want to pursue STEM?
Yeah.
You're probably not going to be very likely, to kind of cultivate that spark within you. You're kind of just going to go with the flow.
Right.
So there's definitely that social element. And, I talk a little bit about the academic part, that unfortunately there are some teachers that do hold bias against girls, and to some extent people of color, and it sometimes manifests itself in classroom participation and, in a number of other ways. But sometimes, people in our own, backyard, or people in our own, communities don't actively promote it. And I think there are two parts of it. I think part of it is, they themselves may not know, about, the diversity of careers, and, that women do belong here and women of color belong here.
Right.
But I also think that for some people, they're like, oh, that's a boys. That's boy stuff. And if you are interested in it, you're a tomboy and you'll eventually grow out of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously not true.
Right. So now fast forward, you had this environmental impact that you weren't aware of because you were a child, but it was impacting your decisions, and you went the path of, a finance career. You were good at it. You didn't like it. You decided to sort of return to something you naturally loved, this thing that you learned from, your engagements with your dad. When you go back into this space, I know what the answer is here. You're going to see that there's not a lot of people who look like you, right? There's not a lot of black people there. There's not a lot of women there. As you're going into these hackathons, into these conferences, how did that make you feel? Did you use that as fuel to say, wow, this is really important, that, clearly this is an opportunity, and I probably didn't know about it before because there weren't those role models, available to me? Or was it intimidating? Like, how did you feel just personally?
Yeah. So, first, I didn't notice it at first. I think I had my own fears and trepidations about this thing that I was about to do. So, like, just trying to get my internal house in order to kind of like navigate all of this, I think was like kind of ruling my brain. But then as I started to give way to some of that, fear and anxiety, and I really started looking at like, oh, wow, there really are not any women of color here. Like, and not just in classes, but conferences, in, workplaces. Like, I was like starting to notice. And I remember someone said, oh, it's just because, women of color aren't interested. And that's why we're seeing such low numbers. And I said, I refuse to accept that. That can't be right. And as I, was kind of going through my own education, learning about organizations like Black Girls Code, learning about, the different types of organizations for people of color in technology, it started to become more and more clear that, this is obviously an ongoing, issue. This is something that we all like need to address. And I say we need to address it because it really is a business imperative and a society imperative to have more diversity in technology. Like, when you think about artificial intelligence, you don't want people, who think the same and have only had a very limited set of experiences, programming your loan application or your mortgage application.
Yes.
And these have serious effects that can continue to marginalize communities. And so for me, it's beyond my own comfort. It's just more of an issue like this needs to happen.
Right. It definitely feels like in this moment, we are consistently talking about the systemic racism, and the systemic biases that exist throughout the country. And you're right. What's really, really scary, and I think it's actually been accelerated by COVID-19, is we are moving into a world of automation. We've already been doing it for consumer things, but it's starting to make real decisions that are going to have real long-lasting impact. As you mentioned, financial decisions, right? People's ability to get access to financing, hiring decisions, right? A lot of hiring systems, people don't know this, but a lot of hiring systems are shifting to an automatic, data-driven analysis before they even arrive at an individual to review it. And a lot of things could be baked into those algorithms. So I think you're right. There is an imperative to make sure we're not codifying biases that we're not even aware of. And the only way you can do that is to have a diverse set of people at the table that when you're working on the algorithm, someone says, you may not know this, but right.
Yep, exactly.
So what moved you to write a book? That is a big, I know I'm sort of on the other side of it right now and getting ready to launch mine. It is a huge endeavor to write a book. What moved you from having this journey and to getting this career at IBM to feeling like, wow, A, I can be an authority on this, and B, clearly you felt called to do this work. What sort of drove you there?
Yeah, and I just want to say congratulations on your upcoming book release. I'm excited for that. My journey to becoming the author of this book, it was definitely not planned. I was offered the opportunity of Susie Publisher, and they got to know me and asked, have you ever thought about writing a book to help other women of color, based largely on your experiences, making this transition. And, I will be honest, it was a very, I don't know if I'm necessarily ready for this. I'm
right.
the most I had written was like academic papers, and I can barely write an email. But now you want me to write this very monumental, this very big and important thing. And it took a little bit of soul searching, but I said, if I can make life better for someone else, if I can save them some of the grief, if I can talk candidly about some of the issues that they can have, so that they can not only, survive in a tech career, but, thrive and be happy and exceed me, I'd be foolish not to take that opportunity. So, I worked with the writing team. We developed the plan together. And, over a year's time, on top of working full time, I just wrote wherever I could.
I know that hustle. I know that life. Man. Well, thank you for doing it. It is such an important book. Have you had companies reaching out to you now realizing they don't know enough about this topic? They don't know enough about how to engage properly with women of color in terms of helping to support them to be successful in their career, and hopefully buying copies of the book for themselves, but also like reaching out to you for deeper levels of engagement?
Yeah. So when the book was, originally published in April, there was definitely people, kind of reaching out, given the magnitude of what's going on in society today with, the protests and, the killing of George Floyd. You've seen this kind of ratchet up considerably in terms of people saying, oh, there's a lot I don't know. There's a lot I don't get. And I need to have these conversations. So it's been gratifying for me, as a professional, to be able to, have these dialogues and to, be in this conversation and try to move this needle along. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more activity. And so it's almost like a good problem to have, in that, okay, everyone gets it now. Let's do something concrete and let's keep things moving forward.
Yeah. So can we talk about like some of the things in the tech world that have been happening? So as a programmer, the nomenclature of master and slave is baked into web technology. Like, it's there are some things that you just if you're a Black person and you get into tech, specifically you get into the code side of it, you just have to kind of go, okay, I guess that's what we're doing here, right? Because they're they're baked in. And, quite frankly, technology is not a place that has a history of being culturally sensitive, right? I mean, I think that is something, right, as we've diversified the space more and more, there's more and more advocacy for it. But recently, as code has kind of converged around GitHub as like the online community and platform for coders everywhere, they recently made a really big change to their nomenclature, specifically around master-slave. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I remember seeing the headline this past weekend that they, for the master repositories, they were going to change that to main, and change several other places where we talked about master and slave nomenclature. And I appreciate that. I do. And I do think that that's an important thing to kind of talk about, how we've, from the small things that we've done, to kind of, make people of color feel small, make them feel less important, make them feel, not that they're not safe. So, on the one hand, I do applaud that effort. I will be very honest with you in that I'm like, if you really want to drive this discussion about bringing more, Black people and people of color into technology, and specifically GitHub, you need to hire more Black people and people of color into GitHub. It's on the surface, it's a very thoughtful thing to do, but that in and of itself is not going to move the needle for the things that need to happen. We need more concrete action. we need to be mindful of like what we're doing in terms of recruiting practices, taking the bias out of these, practices. And we need to have the hard conversations about why people may not be, feel safe or they're leaving. These are the things that need to happen on a very basic level. So I couldn't help but give that a little bit of shade when I when I read it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's important that we follow it up.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and I think you're right. The nomenclature changes, the removal of particular brands that are just inherently offensive. These are, to their credit, these are sort of the quick wins that make all the sense in the world, and you want to see those things done. And when they're done, it's like, that's awesome, right? I think that what I'm starting to have conversations about, I mentioned to you that I've been having a very similar conversation, not the same one, but a very similar conversation in the healthcare industry for the last week and a half. And,
right.
The real conversation is about, do we understand what we mean when we say systemic racism? Like, do we understand what that means? And do we understand like how baked in it is into the system and how pervasive it is and how significantly it disadvantages people of color, especially Black people, because for example, like I've been starting to do some anecdotal research in the venture capital space, which is, sort of an offshoot of the tech space, quite frankly. Right.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, there are people of color there, but they're not Black people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, this is where certain terms, where it is getting to this point where we're like, we got to like just talk about Black people for a second. You know what I mean? Because I'm actually seeing, a good contingent of people of Asian heritages, represented in technology and in venture capital, in leadership positions, in really strong positions, which is great. But really the big deficit is around Black people. It's, it's pretty significant there specifically. So can we talk a little bit about organizations like, Black Girls Code and other organizations that you want to mention? And because I think what is great about those organizations is they are founded with an understanding of the systems and how deep they are and like how much work has to go into resolving them, right? And how a quick win can't really resolve them. It's just not possible, right? And even like education can't really resolve them. When you talk about changing hiring, that's a monumental thing. And then beyond that, how do you ensure that person is successful in a system where even once they're hired, they are going to be disadvantaged, right?
Right.
What organizations can you point people to? Because a lot of what we're seeing people look for right now is resources. Like, okay, I get it. I understand. I at least know, right, that I don't know how bad it is, but I'm starting to get a sense of I don't know how bad it is. I know I need to read things. I know I need to watch movies. I know I need to watch 13th, right? People know they need to watch 13th. But in the tech world, what are the organizations you would point people to say, look, these are organizations you can start to support, you can sponsor, you can engage, that will really help you to figure out how to navigate your organization to a more inclusive place?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and something that as business leaders and other managers, that's something you want to keep in mind. One organization that I've had the pleasure of getting to know the last couple of months is NPower. That's the N like Nancy and the word power. So they're based in Brooklyn, New York, but they have chapters in different states. And what they do, on top of offering technology courses to women of color and to military veterans, they also offer research and white papers to the broader tech companies about these are the things that you want to be thinking about if you want to have women of color excel in technical careers at your organization. In fact, I think they released a report today kind of outlining the strategies that employers can use to really be partners and help women of color succeed.
Okay.
So that's a great organization to reach out to. I know that AI for All also has kind of the same type of model where they, provide education to, marginalized groups, but they also have that education piece. They help with diversity and inclusion programs so that you're making more, robust ones as well. Chick Tech is also another one that I'm familiar with, and I do volunteer work for. Again, they provide free meetings, resources, but also to help practitioners in companies as well as others who are interested in diversifying their pool to really, get that done rather than have it be just this high level, must be nice, type of pipe dream, like to make it a reality. Got
it. I want to end the conversation with you, not necessarily paraphrasing, but maybe speaking to women of color who are thinking about tech or already have decided this is what they want to do, but are very early in their journey. What are some of the key principles, points of advice that you would offer to those women?
Yeah. So the thing that I always stress is the importance of developing a good network. And I think that was one of the things that I struggled with initially because, I'm not a social butterfly. I don't know how I got into sales, but I'm not a social butterfly. And, it takes me some time to, warm up to people. And so when I first started, I kind of thought about it as, all I need to do is just focus on my skills. I don't need to focus on anything else. And I found out pretty quickly how wrong I was. Like you need other people. So when I say network, I mean your mentors, your sponsors, people that you have informational interviews with, your friends. I mean, these are the people that are not only going to help you, get into tech, but they're going to really help you when you're facing challenges in your, career. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to need them, now more than ever. The second, just briefly, is the careers are diverse. There's so many things that you can do within the technology industry. And the thing that I try to dispel, especially when I talk to people coming in, it's not just software engineering and software development. It's not just cybersecurity. But there's, product development, there's user experience design, there's what I do, consulting. I mean, the sky is, limitless in terms of what you can pursue. And, the places that you can go to do these careers are everywhere. Mm-hmm. So rather than thinking about the Facebooks and the Amazons, technology touches everything. So, think a little bit more broadly. Like it blew my mind that Bank of America was like a top technology recruiter. I was like, yeah. I had no idea. But yeah, it's the places that you wouldn't think that these types of jobs exist. And finally, just a continuous learning mindset. It's never going to be one and done. And so just embrace that all the time.
You said it all right there. That is the perfect thing to end on. It is constant, continuous learning forever. Like really, as long as you're going to be in it, if you're going to be relevant, if you're going to add value, you have to have a consistent beginner's mind, and you have to carve out time. And I think you have to like it. Like you have to like the continuity of the learning experience. Otherwise, you'll just get burnt out because there is no learn, I'm done, and then leverage that for the rest of my career. That's just not what technology is about.
Not at all. Not at all. You're absolutely right.
Awesome. Well, Susanne, I'm so glad we got to do this show, and I'm so excited for your book and for hopefully all the companies it's going to help to get better at this. This is going to make companies better. Having a more diverse workforce that is included at the highest levels, and that means you have to make space, you have to develop that talent, you have to adjust your culture because part of the reason why these cultures have not been cultures where diverse people can thrive is because unknowingly they've been uncomfortable cultures for diverse people to thrive in. So there's a lot of work to do here, but your work is part of the collective body of work that's going to help us all be successful. So thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, you need to follow Susanne at Susanne Tedrick 4 on Instagram, at Susanne Tedrick on Twitter. WeBelongInTech.com. Go check out the website. Go buy her book today on Amazon, Women of Color in Tech. It's a great read. I'm 2/3 of the way through it, which is saying a lot because I have no time to do anything right now between this show and everything else I'm working on. Big part of that is because I have my own book coming out in less than 2 weeks, Create and Orchestrate, coming to you live on June 30th. Looking for people to buy it on that day on Amazon. We're trying to get a bestseller, so please help me make that happen. As always, please subscribe to my podcast if you're watching this live right now or seeing it on a social network on the replay. You can find it. Just search for Marcus Whitney. I'll come up first. It's on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, etc. And finally, follow me online at Marcus Whitney pretty much everywhere. MarcusWhitney.com is where you can subscribe to the newsletter. And that is it. We will be back tomorrow on Juneteenth. I'm taking the day off, but I am doing a show with my good friend Lonell Matthews, who's one of the co-chairs of the Nashville chapter of My Brother's Keeper. We're going to talk about just the significance of this moment, the growth of the awareness and the support and the embrace of Juneteenth. And what people can do to continue to keep this movement going. So until tomorrow, thank you so much for tuning in, and let's build a new normal, y'all. Peace.
Thank you for